Where I was working was going through quite a bit of reorganisation at the time, and it was, and my post was about to be made redundant. I remember one of my doctors said to me, "Oh, you should do the lottery now. You've just been made redundant and you've been diagnosed with leukemia, so do the lottery, maybe something good will come out of it." My work were very understanding. Rather than making me go through the redundancy process, at that point they kept me on the payroll for another year, and then we negotiated my taking redundancy and early retirement. I was able to apply for benefits in the form of PIP, which was really helpful in terms of, because I got the mobility component as well, which meant I was able to get a blue badge, and I was able to use the extra payment to have a cleaner, and to pay for a cleaner and to pay for taxis, rather than, because I couldn't use public transport because of the risk of infection, and my house had to be extra clean for the same reason. So that was very useful to be able to get that.
Post-transplant, I lived by myself, and in some ways it was good, and in some ways I guess it was negative as well. It was good in the sense of, if anything needed doing around the house, i.e. if any shopping needed doing or any chores or whatever needed doing, I had to do it, which I guess was good because I kept active in that way. But at times it could feel, and it did feel, quite isolating as well when you're at home and you're by yourself and there's no one else around. That could be difficult as well. But I was lucky that I had a good set of friends and family around me as well, who would always check in on me, take me out, come round, invite me round, etc. So we just managed it, I guess.
My occupation before the transplant was working in sales, and I worked for a company that sold attraction tickets. They kept my job open for me when they found out that I was diagnosed. I was diagnosed in June of 2014. I went back to work June 2015. My work paid me in full for the first 6 months I was off work. So that was a huge help. Financially for me and Steph, it impacted short term quite badly, of course, because I wasn't earning anything. I work in a business where I earn commission on things. I was very, very lucky that my employers were 100% understanding and supportive of the situation. If there are other people that can support you, don't feel too bad to ask.
I was really fortunate that my parents helped me out. It was surprisingly hard to get benefits. That was one thing I learned. I don't think my employer really understood, but my employer, I will say, has been extremely flexible and very, very supportive. Going back to work was quite a shock to the system, because I'd spent a long time in the hospital system, which was totally different environment, different people, different routine to the day. You know, you're talking about life and death in a hospital, and when I go into work, it's not life or death, but I felt that people were treating some of the things you do on a day-to-day basis as seriously. Speak up and inquire with all the charities. They may only have a grant of a few £100s, which doesn't sound a lot, but actually it can be very helpful.
So I was employed by a housing association before I had my transplant, and worked as a service development manager there. And I thought I was quite enjoying it, kind of thing. But unfortunately my employer wasn't that supportive. So when I told them I was going to have a transplant, unfortunately they made me redundant. I was really lost, to be honest. I was really down. But what I did was it made me think about what job I was doing and why I was doing it. And I realised that I would like to work in the charity sector, something that helped people. So when I went back to work, I was definitely supported by my new employer, who was Anthony Nolan, and they were very understanding of, you know, what had happened to me, and the kind of support I would need. Try and keep your employer aware as much as possible, really, what's happening to you. Try and be as open and honest as you can with your employer about what's going to happen, and what to expect, and what they can expect from you as well.
I took off a full year, so I never worked from when I was diagnosed in May right up until the following year, May. So it was a complete full year. Because I'm from South Africa, I wasn't, able to get any funds from the government and that, and it was quite tricky living off one salary, which my wife Candice, still had to go to work and work really hard to, we had to downsize in a lot of ways. We moved to a smaller place, and I got quite a bit of support from my family back home that used to send me money just to get through, the months and that. But other than that, no, we just worked hard and kept at it. Going back to work was a nice normality in the sense of, I could just give the people, light information of why, where I was and how the diagnosis will affect my job, and it was quite nice, the support, that I got from all the staff members. I wasn't looked upon, oh, that's the guy that, is not well. My friend had given me Dean. He takes his monthly wages and his salary and he divides them up into envelopes, so he knows what each week he can spend, and me and Candice used that, and we got through some really dark and tough times.
I had largely retired. I'd taken early retirement about 4 years before the diagnosis. I'd got a pretty good occupational pension. I was made aware that I could get financial support if I needed it at any stage, or my wife could for travelling to and from. But I was in the fortunate position that I didn't need to call on that or use it in any way. If I'd have had my diagnosis of leukemia or MDS 20 years, let's say, before it actually happened, then it would have been a very different challenge, I think. There are a number of bodies out there, of which clearly Anthony Nolan is one, who you can get help and support. They can also give you help as to how to approach your employer and the kind of seek guidance on how that should be done.
You've just got to be selfish, speak up and inquire with all the charities that are linked to whatever the stem cell transplant, Anthony in particular, Macmillan. They may only have a grant of a few £100s, which doesn't sound a lot, but actually it can be very helpful because public transport is expensive. You can't always take public transport if your immune system is depleted. And when you're having a stem cell transplant, it's a specialist form of medicine, so your local hospital highly unlikely to be doing it. So, for example, I'd have to get a train into London, which cost me £30 return every time, and I'd have to sometimes go up twice a week. That's £60 a week when I wasn't earning any money and I still had to buy food and pay the bills and the mortgage. So every penny helps, and more charities than you think can be there. So just inquire, and they'll all help out if they can. And if every penny helps, just be selfish. Just beg Boris Dill to get that money.